Doctor of Demons by Neon Sangetsu, Chapter 6, Plots and Pillars. This is my domain, my family, harm either, and, well, let's just say you'll have a bad time. So let's get along, huh? Let's be friends. I can be a very, very good friend and a truly terrible enemy. A king of demons, plots and pillars. Time was deadly poison to an immortal. As a demon, the very concept of it baffled Naruto, if only because it moved so swiftly for him. Days blended into weeks, weeks into months, and months into years, then decades. He found it ironic. Time was meant to be the great equalizer. Everything fell to it eventually, eroded by the inevitable exodus of sunrise and sunset. Hearts of memories and buds all fell prey to it in the end, sooner or later. For demons, time was far more dangerous, precisely because they couldn't die, at least not of old age. Hearts faltered, memories faded, hunger consumed, which was precisely why it was so important to forge new bonds wherever one could, to surround oneself with family precisely so they could not suffer such. Doing so had worked wonders for him so far. Their ranks swelled with each passing year. Newcomers were vetted, brought in, and if they were found wanting, they were dealt with. Neither the Slayers nor Muzan realized just how close they came to oblivion more than once. He kept tensions from boiling over. Hunts were carried out, never against the innocents, but rather the wicked. It was a tidy little system, if he said so himself. And then, one day, things changed. A woman approached the wooden manor, nestled deep within the forest. It stood framed by shadowed trees, to devour the very light itself. As though such a thing could not exist within the manor before her, merely stepping towards the put a chill in her into the air, and that all but threatening to steal the very breath from her lungs. Opening her cart and knife in hand, she nevertheless stepped forth, a trembling hand settled against the fingers curling around it to find purchase. Gingerly, she swept it aside. It parted with a soft sigh. Darkness loomed within. She lingered, afraid to step over the threshold. Stay calm. She willed the words at herself. This will be over before you know it. Just relax. What's the worst that could happen? Death, evisceration, torture. She heard the tales of this place over the years, a wandering mansion that never appeared in the same place twice. At times it lingered, at others it left at once. More often than not, the owner welcomed guests with open arms, but he'd been known to refuse others before. Great men had been turned away more than once, while mere paupers were accepted. Those who resisted, well, she'd seen the skeletons outside. No, mustn't think like that. One truth about this place remained constant. That was why she'd come here, steeling herself. She stepped across the threshold. The faint distant sound of a drum hit her ears, and the world shifted. A blink, that was all it took for everything to upend itself. One moment she'd lingered at the entrance, and the next she found herself standing in a dimly lit parlor. Dim, but not dusty, mostly maroon perhaps, and she tried to ignore the stains upon the floor. Two stairs stretched on either side of her, leading up to a balcony near the back of the hall. Something shifted in the shadows near them. Is anyone there? Her voice echoed in the lifeless halls, bounding off seemingly endless staircases. All the stories say the man who lives here has a secret knowledge. The darkness held no such for her. I want to learn, too. She swallowed, stilling her fear before barreling on. To help people. None answered her, and here at last her nerves faltered. Was this place abandoned after all then? Had she come all this way for naught? I want to be a doctor. The silent mansion did not answer her. I should have known, she groused. They were just stories. Stories, huh? Something stirred in the shadows behind her. She knew it, if only because there hadn't been anywhere there when she entered the mansion. I know a thing or two about stories. Her blood ran cold as she heard the faint sound of footsteps, accompanied by the sweet sound of docile laughter. After all, someone's chin came down over her shoulder in her peripherals, whiskered cheeks dimpled in a smile. I'm the one who started those little tales decades ago. She froze, a shriek still stilled in her tongue. No, no fear. She remembered the stories. She mustn't show fear. You're him, then? The doctor? Of a sort. She whirled when he took his chin from her shoulder, only to find he was no longer behind her. I heal people. His voice echoed in the dark all around her. Help them help themselves, you know. Sometimes healing means tending wounds. Shadows danced in the gloom, leaving her reeling. Others, it means ending lives. What kind of a doctor do you want to be? A wise woman would have refuted those words and walked back out those doors. But she was also desperate. She'd exhausted all other options. There was nowhere else for her to go. The kind that heals people. And so she sheathed her knife. Don't mistake me for a witch. I mean you no harm. No witch is here. When she turned back, he stood before her again, smiling. This time, it reached his eyes. But you won't find many humans either. Despite Tamayo's best efforts, tiny hands clapped once, and candles sprang to life in the dark, bathing the gloom in a ruddy red glow. That's a frightful trick, she shivered. How does one do that? Practice. His lips quirked, exposing decidedly normal teeth. All things considered, when you have as much time as I do, you learn a thing or two. Here at last, she got a good look at the man's face. Those weren't the eyes of a human, nor were they those of a monster. Stark slitted scarlet pupils akin to a cat, and yet for all that, he looked almost amused by her will, her defiance, her curiosity. And this time, when he stepped forward, still regarding her with those eerie eyes, she held her ground. Gods, he really was quite tall. But you are the first human to find this place in the last 20 years, he continued with a hum, so I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You want to be a doctor, do you? All right. An arm swept back, and she jolted as the door swung open on the far side of the room. Follow me. Let's see how much you can learn without going mad. Temptation reared its ugly head. She tried to peer past him, but she couldn't see anything beyond a faint light. Just like that, just like that, he walked ahead of her, leaving her with no choice but to follow. I give a great deal to my family. There it was again, that play on words as he led her into the light. I lend my knowledge freely to those that prove worthy of it. And you, a ruby red eye peered back over his shoulder. You still haven't told me your name. Her lips pursed. Isn't it customary for the hosts to introduce themselves first? Aha! A sharp bark of laughter burst out of him. Is it? I tend to forget little things like that. How the time changes. Tell you what. A lone finger rose, and she glimpsed the claws within. If you survive the week, I'll tell you all you want to know and more. Do we have a deal? That doesn't sound pleasant. Curiosity died in ugly death. How dangerous is this knowledge of yours? Not at all. He startled her with a wink. It's more the company you'll be keeping. The girls like guests. He tittered when she balked. Don't worry, they don't bite. Much. I've asked Ducky and Utero to be on their best behavior. It's only Bella, Cassandra, and Daniela you need to watch out for. She blinked. Are they? Don't ask about the names. He asked. She asked something else instead. Just how large is the family of yours? Your name, if you please. He stopped her short. I'm enjoying our banter, but Kerma would appreciate it if you stopped trying to distract me. On a whim, she gave it to him. His eyes widened. Indeed, she took some small pleasure in his surprise. Lisa of Lupu, another foreign name. Never heard of that one before, and he never would again. 10 years later, Naruto's mouth ran dry. Wanna run that by me again? I don't know how else to say it. The messenger before him pressed their head deeper into the floor. There was an attack, sir. Try as he might, he just couldn't seem to swallow, let alone digest the news he just received. For once in his life, Kurma had fallen silent. He'd find no help there. By the log, he felt faint. How did this happen? A muscle jumped in his jaw, pounding alongside a vein in his temple. We were careful. He flung out a hand and grasped the nearby wall to support himself. Firm fingers closed around the shelf itself. In his anger, he underestimated his strength. It came away with an awful crunch. The noise set him off once and for all. A snarl tore out of him as he whirled, casting it down in a tower of splinters. He stomped down on it, grinding it into sawdust. Once, twice, thrice, his right hand came down over his face, lone red eye glaring out between his fingers. Only then did his ire abate enough to think again. His gaze fixed on the masked messenger before him. Finish your report. It was not a request. Summarize it. Now, nearly half a dozen brothers and sisters wounded, and a score of supplies lost. And the dead, he grimaced. Ours? None. His heart skipped a beat. How? Myra's delay saved many lives, and Lady Mukago was nearby. If not for her, Miss Lisa would have lost more than an arm and an eye, as if he needed to be reminded of it. How is she? Recovering. The blank white facade of that mask reflected nothing. Of course it did. And this man designed it as such to conceal his identity. He also could sense the tangled knot of emotions within. She remains in good spirits as stated, but still doesn't believe she's done anything wrong. She also tasked me with a message for you. He felt that nod grow tighter still. Don't hurt them. They don't understand. Of course she said those words. Naruto absolutely hissed. What was she thinking, throwing herself in the way like that? She was human. Humans died easily, so very easily. He would have turned her by now if she'd let him. He'd grown admittedly fond of that feisty doctor, even if she butted heads with Tamayo these days. Who else would willingly throw themselves between a demon and a slayer's blade? Once again, he willed himself to exhale. Mari had proven her worth again. Useful little spy that she was. She'd been busy these last 2 decades, it seemed. He'd have to congratulate her, but later he still had questions. What of the settlement they were building? He knew answer by the young man's ruins. Were they at least able to salvage anything? It was burned to the ground. Another hiss. How did this happen? The messenger fidgeted. They were taken by surprise. I already know that. He swung an arm out, obliterating the wall behind him. Servants scurried away from his wrath. What I want to know is how the Slayers learned of this. When the messenger didn't dare contradict him, rightfully so, he bolted onward. Only a handful of demons outside the Nine even knew about that place. It was well hidden, protected. So how? Kurma piped up at last. You already know. He did. He just didn't want to consider it. They weren't careless. The only other explanation would be a traitor. Yes. His blood ran cold and boiled all at once. A spy, that meant a mole in their family, not a new one. Someone positioned in the upper echelons at the very least. Someone had sold them out. Lives had been imperiled. Families uprooted because of this. He'd have to call another. He'd been too lax after all. And you're certain the Slayers did this? He tried and failed to keep his voice level. None of this was staged. He wouldn't put it past Muzan to try something like this, but the man wasn't aware of them yet. If he was, he'd been remarkably quiet about it. No, the masked head bobbed deeply, nearly kissing the floor. Multiple slayers were sighted, and two Hashira involved in the attack. Lady Mukago slew the current wind and the present shadow. Lady Mari turned her blade upon her own men in a pincer assault. There were no survivors. None remained to out her. Thus, her cover remains intact. That got a blink out of Naruto. She became a pillar. When did that? No, it's not important. People could get up to a lot in 2 decades. She'd never mentioned it in her letters. It felt like she was missing something. It felt like he was missing something here. But what? He bit back a growl, the noise of which straddled the manor from top to bottom. To their credit, his messenger only pressed their head deeper into the floor. They did not dare speak further. If only for fear of rousing his wrath, Muzan would have butchered them on the spot. But he wasn't Muzan now, was he? Don't shoot the messenger. He mustn't harm them, even if he was seeing red. If nothing else, he refused to fall that far. Anything else to report? Lady Mari has another, one she swears she'll only give to you. He could hear the grimace in his voice. He's with her. Is that so? A blonde brow rose. Fine, thank you, Adrian. I'll give you a bit of my blood later. After a moment's pause, he issued another order. Have Lisa brought back to the manor when she's fit to travel, and I'll see about turning your mother. And stop wearing that ridiculous thing already. I'd like to see your face when I talk to you. Thank you very much. Low laughter pierced the room as the messenger rose to his full towering height. Must I? I find I rather enjoy concealing my identity like this. A blond brow rose. Off it comes, or I'll take it away and tan your hide myself, young man. Don't make me sick Saifa on you. As you wish. Golden hair spilled forth to framing a pile of Eve handsome visage writ with worry. About the slayers. Naruto's smile died in ugly death. What about them? Are you going to kill them? Ah, they'd come back to this again. No one died, he said at last, choosing his words with caution. Oh, but there will be a reprisal. We have a traitor to find too. It was almost painful, seeing the relief in his eyes. You won't slaughter the corpse then? No, oi! He clicked his tongue in mild admonishment. Have some faith in your old man. They provided an essential function for this world. This was an accident. Accidents happen. I'll let this slide. Just this once. Barreling on, he silenced the younger man's reply. But that doesn't mean I'll leave them be either. But they nearly killed Mother, and I'm going to find the one responsible for leaking her location and end them. He reassured him. There won't be a repeat of this. Go on now. Go on now. You've done your part. Be with your mother. The man bowed and departed quickly, leaving him in contemplation. You're soft on him. Naruto pursed his lips and made for a different door. He's my kid. Of course I am. He found Maria waiting for him in an adjacent room. The moment she saw him, she prostrated herself before him. For a moment, he almost didn't recognize her. Then again, time didn't stand still for her. She wore the signature coat of a Hashira, a white mantle rimmed with curling black clouds near the edge of a warm fabric. That what had Adrian called her, Shadow Hashira. He'd said it suited her. Her dark hair, once cropped short, was bound into a braid just over one shoulder, her face etched by scars that hadn't existed 2 decades prior, wrinkles in her face too, and a scar under one eye, but the spark in them, the desire to live at any and all cost. Now that he remembered, after all this time, she'd kept her promise. She'd been even more useful as a spy if she survived what was to come. Report in, sir. The young woman pressed her hand into the floor at his feet at the sight of him, uncaring of her dirty uniform. I have news of the corpse movements and another raid in 1 week's time. A week, huh? Naruto thumbed his chin. Hmm. Seems they were getting uppity after what he'd done. How many, Hashira? 3, came the answering cry. Water, thunder, and fire. They will be coming here to this location. His lips twitched. Yet more proof of a traitor. He'd have to weed them out, and soon. That many. A low, tired sigh pervaded the air behind him, reminding him that they weren't alone. Interesting. Let them come. Red eyes rolled. You're worse than Akasa, you know. I am not. They remained in the shadows, but he caught the glimpse of a smile therein. Akasa would slay them all in the name of a good fight. If they were weak and refuse to see reason, they will die. If they are strong of spirit and heart, they will join us, blood or no. That makes sense. Honestly, there was no arguing with this one. In any case, you did well. Naruto ignored his Earthswa ally and knelt to pat his subordinate's head. Thank you, Mari. I'm sure it was hard all those years. Not at all. I was happy to be of service to you. She raised her head, eyes shining, cheeks flushing at his praise. I spent so many years pretending to be one of them. Will you make me a demon now, like you promised? Naruto shared a look to his lieutenant. They shrugged, still not leaving the shadows where they lurked. Paranoid old bastard. He still didn't want to show his face to anyone. Not that he could blame him. If anyone knew his identity, if they saw his face, the world might end. The Slayers would become well and truly relentless if they knew who was helping him. But did he have to be such a stubborn one? Fine, force the onus of choice on him. Why don't you? Hold out your hands. Mari raised the trembling palms. Naruto bit his hand, blood spilling into her trembling fingers as she cupped them. Drink it all without hesitation. He said, anything less will probably kill you. Dark eyes considered the blood gravely. And if I live? A shrug. That would be telling. Go on now. Drink. To her credit, Mari didn't hesitate. Not a jot. She drank deeply and pitched back. Naruto exhaled in quiet relief. Welcome to the family. Previews. You must be the new girl, the spy, was it? Will you be returned to the Corps soon? Yes, he wants me to continue my duties. Tamayo patted her head. Understandable. It was nigh on impossible to discern one of Naruto's family from a human. So long as she kept her under her control, she'd be able to supply them with information for years to come, perhaps decades even, before the Slayers caught on to her. Good girl. We're killing those traitors, right? Tell me we're killing them when we find them. Naruto forbore the urge to roll his eyes. Yes, Susamaru, there will be blood. Happy now? Very. She cuddled up against him, rolled over, and settled him with her hips. Two of her arms gripped his shoulders. Here, let me distract you. Hello, Hashira. Let's play. But first, the small fry. The manor exploded into light and life. Hmm. Daddy says I shouldn't talk to strangers. You're immortal. Not quite. Naruto grunted, ignoring the blades in his neck. Just very, very, very stubborn. If you want to kill me, you'll need to try a little harder. Urukadaki was no fool. He didn't waste time with idle matter. He merely gripped his blade and tried to push through. Naruto blew out a sigh. It seemed a shame to kill such a man. Truly a shame. He didn't want to. Last chance, his voice rose, or you'll lose a leg, like your friend. Flame breathing, thunder breathing. Taki's head snapped to the side. All right, old man, she cooed, all sinful snark. I'll play. Her eye snapped to life, and her would-be slayer shot out the house. So much blood. Oh, can I keep that one? Cassandra, he looks tasty. Surely father wouldn't mind if we killed one. Daniela, no, we were told to leave them alive. Besides, I saw him first. Shinjiro reared his blade. You're mad? Nope. Bella tittered. Just hungry. End of chapter 6.